Hey y'all, I'm so glad you're joining me today. I really can't wait to share this sequence with you. We're gonna do it both seated and then on the mat to give everybody some different variations and options, and you can explore what feels right for your body. All together, I'd like us to start seated. So you'll need a chair, preferably one with no arms, and you'll need 2 blocks. And then if you have a strap or I have a scarf, you could also use a towel too. You'll want to have that handy. So if you need to pause and grab your props, this would be the perfect time to do it. And we will get started with our practice. So as we always do, we'll take an easy, comfortable seat. Let our hips sink down into the chair. Our spine tall and strong. Lift our shoulders up to our ear, roll them back and relax them down. Lift the crown of our head towards the sky. Either take a soft gaze towards the ground or let your eyes drift close as we stop to start. So we'll stop and pause, arriving in this moment at the beginning of our practice together. Take a deep inhale through your nose. Exhale everything out with a sigh. Inhale through the nose. Exhale everything out with a sigh. Inhale through your nose. Exhale everything out with a sigh. Just sit for a moment with a soft gaze or with your eyes closed and notice how you feel in this moment. Are there any emotions that are coming up or any messages coming from your body? Maybe it's been a busy weekend and your body is tired, or a busy day. Or maybe it's been a lazy weekend and your body is really craving a little movement. I would invite you to honor what your body is asking of you. I know yoga, but you are the expert of your own body. When you're ready, go ahead and let your eyes open and come back to your space with me. You know, my rules for practicing, it really doesn't matter what the poses look like. I try to offer lots of variations so we can find what works best for each of our bodies and what feels good. Pain is a no-go, so if at any time you feel any pain, ease back up or soften out or take a pause so we can talk about, like, where did you feel pain and why, and is there a different variation that I can offer? And we can do that just through a chat. So as we're taking a seat, go ahead. I have both of my blocks on the floor between my feet. You may also put them on the outside of your feet. Just depends on where you like them, and we can play with that as we begin our warm-up session and our sequence. So I always start with warm-up because it's kind of like walking outside when it's really cold and trying to start your car up right away. And you know that you need to give your car just a little bit of time to warm up before you kick it into drive. It's the same with our yoga practice. We want to warm up our joints a little bit before we really start moving them. And so we'll start with the neck, and I like to just do an easy roll. So let your right ear come to your right shoulder. Resist the urge to raise that right shoulder up towards your ear, and just let your ear fall towards your shoulder. If you want to offer a gentle assist, you can place your right hand on top of your head. Just a tiniest bit of gravity, feeling that stretch on the left side. We'll be here for 3 breaths of your own cycle. Don't try to change it. Just notice the inhale and your exhale. After you finish your cycle, go ahead and let your hand come back down to your lap. Tilt your face forward like you're trying to look into the bright pocket of your shirt. And then let your chin come down to center, peeking into the left pocket of your shirt and rolling your left ear towards your left shoulder. So the same as we just did on the right side. If you want to give yourself a little assist with your left hand, you can do that. Just be really gentle and notice the stretch you feel on the right side of your neck. Still check in and see if your shoulder is trying to come up and meet your ear. It's not the goal. The goal is the next stretch. And then slowly let your hand come back to your lap. We'll rotate your peeking in that left pocket down towards the front, over to the right pocket, and then bring your head back up to center. So let's start with our shoulders. Leave your hands sitting on your lap. We're just going to start with some shoulder shrugs, reaching them up towards your ears, rolling them back and down, forward, up towards our ears, rolling them back around. As slowly as big circles feel good to you. I can feel my shoulders talking to me already. And roll them forward. See if you can align your movement with your breath. So as they come forward and up, inhale. And as you roll them back and down, exhale. And then when you drop them down again, pause and let's go the other way. So as you inhale, bring them up towards your ears from the back and roll them forward and down on your exhale. Maybe get your elbows into it a little bit. Just want to feel your shoulders moving around in that socket and loosen them up a little bit. Go ahead and still that movement. We're going to start our practice today with a little bit of stretching, and I always find that hip stretches are really helpful regardless of how busy my day has been or how lazy I've been on the couch. And one of my favorite hip stretches is pigeon, but it can be really hard on my knees. So I wanted to share a seated version with you. So just notice where your knees and your hips are in relation to each other. We kind of want them at straight lines. So if your knees are higher than your hips, then maybe you want to sit on a blanket and lift up a little bit. If your hips are higher than your knees, then maybe you want to put blocks or a stack of books under. So you can see this raises my knees up a little bit too high, so I'm going to keep my feet on the floor here. And so for a seated, I'm going to shove my blocks out of the way a little bit too. For a seated pigeon, your feet about hip width distance apart. You're going to take your right ankle to your left knee. I like to flex my foot. There's some science that says it really doesn't protect your knee, but I think it feels good in the stretch, so that's why I do that. But just let your ankle rest on your knee. You're going to sit up with a tall spine and notice where you feel that stretch on your hip. And see if you can send your breath into your hip and into that stretch. And if you would like to add a little bit more, you can sit up with that tall spine and hinge from the hip. Don't round your back, but hinge forward from the hip, and you'll increase that outer hip stretch. And so this is a version of seated pigeon. If you also, we can do this on the floor too in a figure 4. So we're back down and our legs up in the air, holding on behind our knee. Or using on the wall as well with the foot that's on the floor presses into the wall. Is another really nice variation of the stretch. And it's a whole lot easier on knees than pigeon can be. So I invite you to practice and play with those shapes a little bit, even as we're holding this in our seated pose. With every exhale, see if you can let gravity do the trick a little bit and hinge forward at your hips just a little further. Don't go until you feel pain. If it's feeling discomfort, come back out just a little bit. We want to be at about 70%, not 100 or 110. This is not a go hard stretch. We'll be here for 5 more of your own breaths. after you finish your last breath, go ahead and sit back up tall. Give your leg an assist, returning that foot to the floor. Maybe use your hands to rub that energy from your hip to your knee, coming back out of that pose. I always like to move it around and see how it's feeling before we move into the next side. So we're gonna do the same thing. Let your left ankle come to your right knee. Again, I like to flex my foot because I can feel the stretch a little bit more. And then I also use my hand on my sole of my foot as an assist and with the other hand on my knee. I'm gonna sit up nice and tall, grounding the one standing foot, my right foot, into the ground, hinging forward at the hips till I feel about a 70% stretch. If it gets too far and I start feeling pain or pinching, then I want to come back up. So play with that and how it feels in your body and where it feels good. Check in with your knees. If this is uncomfortable, then you can use the blocks and cross at the shin, or even the ankle is an option. See what feels good or right for your body. And if your knees just aren't having it or your hips aren't having it all, then just take a few moments to sit quietly and reflect on what is feeling in your body and check in. We'll be here together for 5 more breaths. End of your 5-breath cycle, go ahead and sit back up straight, pushing your torso, lifting it up, returning your left foot to the floor, using your hands to rub that energy up and down your legs. And now we want to grab your towel or scarf or strap. This next pose is called head to knee pose. And there, of course, are variations of it done on the floor. We're gonna do this one in the chair. And so I'm gonna take one block and put it just out in front of my right foot. And I'm gonna lift that right foot and place the heel of the foot on the block. I'm gonna keep a slight bend in my knee. I don't wanna hyperextend my knee. And then I'm gonna flex my foot back. To give me an assist, this is where my scarf is gonna come in. I'm gonna set it gently on the ball of my foot. I'm gonna sit back up straight, again, finding that straight spine. I don't wanna be rounding my shoulders or my middle back. I'm gonna sit up straight, and I'm gonna walk my hands gently, hinging at the hips, hinging forward over my right leg. Now, my head does not come to my knee, and that's totally okay. But I am feeling the stretch. For me, I feel it mostly in my hamstring, which is really where you do want to feel it, and not in your back. You aren't really putting a lot of pressure here, like not pulling your toes back, but just gently holding and giving yourself a little bit of tension there. I'm gonna breathe into that stretch, and if at any point you feel any pinching or pain, sit back up, maybe lessen the tension on your strap or towel or scarf. Once in a while I get a cramp in my hip right there when I do this, so I wanna honor that and just come back and then explore going into the pose again, bending forward a little further. Three more breaths of your own cycle here. Inhale, exhale 1. Inhale, exhale 2. Inhale, exhale 3. Go ahead and take your strap off, lift your torso, return your foot back to the ground. This time move the block over in front of your left foot. And we're going to do the same pose on the other side. So stretch your left foot out, foot flexed, your heel on the block. Check in, don't hyperextend that knee. Keep a slight bend. You can use your strap or the towel around the ball of your foot again to give you a little extra leverage, a little extra flex on the foot, keeping that spine tall. As you exhale, walk your hands down your makeshift strap, bending into this pose and the stretch. Three more cycles of your own breath. Inhale. Exhale, 1. Inhale. Exhale, 2. Inhale. Exhale, 3. Go ahead and take your strap off. We'll set it off to the side of the mat. Give your leg a hand. Come back. Feet flat on the floor. We're going to do a little seated cat-cow just to give our back a little bit of love after that folding forward. So hands flat on your lap. Sit up again with a tall spine. As you inhale, look up slightly. Arch your back, lifting your heart and your chest forward for cow. As you exhale, round your shoulders, round your back, tuck your chin for cat. Inhale. Look up, arch up, reaching your heart forward. Exhale, round in, tucking your chin for cat. Do 3 more of your own cycle. Inhale, look up, shine your heart up. Exhale, round in. Inhale, look up, shine your heart forward. Exhale, round in, fold in. Inhale, lift up, look up. Exhale, fold in, round in. Come back to a neutral spine. Take your arms, raise them up overhand. Ground your feet, pressing firmly into the ground. Reaching your hands up towards the sky. Palms can be facing each other, palms can be facing forward, whichever is more comfortable for you. You don't have to have your hands straight, they can be out a little wider if that feels comfortable. I like mine more like a little wider, not quite goalpost with my elbows bent, but definitely a wider reach. Take up all the space that you need to. And from here, grab your left wrist and your right hand, reach up. And reach over to the right. This is starting from your hip stretch. You don't want to crunch your back in and lean, but you want to feel that stretch on your left side as you reach over. And notice your breath. If at any time you notice you're holding your breath gets shorter, that means you're doing too much. And come back out of the pose and give yourself a little bit more ease. Not easy, but give yourself a little bit of ease. The whole point of yoga is connecting your body with your breath so you can calm the mind. So if we're doing too much, then it makes it a whole lot harder to breathe and it makes it harder to calm our minds. Come back up to center, switch out the grip, grab your right wrist with your left hand, reach over towards the left side for that stretch. And so just think about that as we go through our practice and notice anywhere you're holding your breath, or if you find yourself getting out of breath or having really short breathing, give yourself some ease so that we can connect movements with breath. And don't ever worry if your breathing and rhythm is faster or slower than what I'm cueing or what I'm doing. Come back up to center. Let your hands come back to your lap. Most folks find as you really get into practicing yoga that if you're following the movements with your own breath, you may be behind the teacher a little bit for a few beats or a couple of poses or half a pose, and that's totally okay. Really, you want to honor your breathing and your rhythm. It's not a competition. There's no trophies for doing poses and sequences the fastest. It's really connecting your breath and your body to calm the mind. It's as simple as it can be. So now that our bodies are warmed up, and you can tell even I'm getting a little out of breath from trying to do this and talk at the same time, let's start our sequence. So together we'll reach our arms up overhead, let our palms come together. We're going to swan dive forward, and this is a good time to figure out where your blocks might be handy. Like I said, I kind of like mine in between my feet and bring my hands to the blocks. You might find that it feels better on the outside. Play around with the level or the stack in this forward fold. By the way, this is a forward fold. And if your forward fold your hands don't come to blocks or the floor, then, that's totally cool. Maybe your forward fold is right here with your hands on your knees. Remember, it's not a competition. Just find what feels good for you. From our forward fold, I'm going to, everybody together, bring your hands to your knees. Come up with a flat back, about halfway up, and shine your heart forward for a half lift. Exhale, back, forward fold, hands to blocks or to your shins, wherever they can reach. As you inhale, grab behind your right knee and come up to seated, lifting your right foot. And so this is a seated lunge. And the whole idea is to stretch our hip and the back out by lifting our foot. I flex my foot again, rather than leave it floppy and hanging. I flex my foot, keeping that engagement. Exhale, lower that foot to the floor. Inhale, reach my arms up. Exhale, forward fold. This time I'm going to bring one of my blocks up with me as I inhale, come up. Place the block between my hand. I'm going to lift my shoulders up, back, and down again. And I'm going to press my hands into the block for this seated version of plank. And so if I'm grounding my feet into the ground and I'm pressing and using my shoulders and pressing my hands into the block, I'm engaging all the muscles that I would for a plank. Inhale for 3 breaths here. Inhale, don't forget to exhale too. Inhale, exhale 1. Inhale, exhale 2. Inhale, exhale 3. Let that go. Return your block towards the ground as you forward fold again. Inhale, hands to knees, look up, flat back, straight back, half lift. Exhale to forward fold. This time come up, your hands behind your left knee, flexing your left foot, bringing that foot up in our seated lunge. Exhale, let your foot down. Leaning down, picking your block up again for our seated plank. Inhale, exhale 1. Inhale, exhale 2. Inhale, exhale 3. Forward fold, returning the block to the ground. This time, let's take the block and set it just to the outside. I'm going to move both blocks out of the way. I'm going to take the left block and set it to the outside of my left foot. No, I'm not going to do that. I had to think about where my blocks wanted to go. So we're going to come back to seated, and I'm going to share a tree pose with you that is seated. So to do this tree, again, we're going to find our straight back, engage our feet. You remember, even in tree standing, we move our right leg 90 degrees out to the side. So we're going to do that while we're seated as well. And then take your toes, resting your foot on the leg of the chair. And so this puts my feet in the bottom half of my body into the tree pose. So for the top half, all I need to do is bring my hands together at heart center. Just like if I was standing, I'm engaging my standing leg, my left leg, and pressing it down. I'm holding my spine tall and pressing into my midline for that balance. And as I find that engagement and find that balance, I'm going to raise my hands and spread them out to grow my tree. See if you can find the work in this seated version of tree, just as if you were standing and trying to balance. And also, pro tip, when you're balancing, it's a whole lot easier to pick a spot in front of you on the ground that isn't moving and fix your gaze there. So if you're staring at something that's not moving, if you get in that habit even seated, it'll help you when you're standing in this pose as well. As you exhale, bring your hands back together overhead into heart center. Give that right knee a helping hand back towards the front. Help that left knee go out to the left side. Bring your toes to the mat, your foot along the leg of the chair, so your knees are at about a 90-degree angle. Pressing into your right leg, straightening and sitting with a tall spine. Bring your hands together at heart center. Fix your gaze. And when you're ready, grow your tree. When you're complete with this pose, bring your hands together, back to heart center. Give your knee a lift, bringing it back towards the front. So the second balancing pose I want to introduce is eagle. And for this one, I will take my block. I'm going to place it just to the outside of my left foot. And for eagle, I'm going to stretch my right leg out straight in front of me. And I'm going to cross my shins so that my right toes are on the block. You can also do this by crossing your knees, your shins, or your ankles. You just need to find where it fits best and what works with your body. For me, it's at the shins, and I want to hug in and grip my legs in. My left foot is flat on the floor, pressing down. With my legs and thighs, I'm squeezing in. With my arms, I want to reach out wide at shoulder height. And I'm going to bring them in for a hug, crossing my left arm over my right. My elbows are aligned facing the front. And this is eagle pose. And so I'm going to hug in to the midline, creating that engagement in this balancing pose. Breathe, don't forget to breathe. Holding the pose, not our breath. A really wise teacher once said that to me, and I thought it was brilliant. We're holding the pose, not our breath. Take 2 more cycles of your own breath here. And when you're ready, reach your arms back open wide. Let your right leg uncross. Move your block to the outside of your right foot, and we're going to do eagle on the other side. So cross your left shin or ankle or knee over the right. Make sure your right foot is flat on the floor. You see I tried to cheat and slide it back. That's not what we want. And press my legs together and engage. Sweep my arms out wide. This time, my right arm goes over my left. I give my shoulders and hug. My elbows are aligned. It's a little hard to see with the black shirt, but my elbows are aligned, facing straight forward. Tall back, pressing into the ground, hugging into the center line of my body. And breathe. Your 3 cycles of your own breath. Stretch your arms out wide, unwind your hands. Let them fall to your lap if you need to adjust your blocks. It's a good time to do it. I'm moving mine back in between my knees, and I'm ready to start our sequence again. Inhale, reach your arms up, stretch for the sky. Exhale, forward fold, bringing my torso towards my thighs, my hands towards the blocks. Inhale, hands to shins or knees, back to a 45-ish degree angle for half lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, grab behind my right knee, flex my right foot and bring it up for a seated lunge. Exhale, and inhale, breathe here, 3 breaths. And let that leg go. Come back to our forward fold. Pick up a block. Come back up straight. Press both feet into the ground. Press both hands into your block or into each other if you don't have blocks for a seated plank. Hold your plank. Hold the pose, not your breath. Exhale, we're going to forward fold, returning that block to the ground. Inhale, hands to shins or knee, half lift. Exhale, forward fold. This time, grab behind the left leg, flex your left foot and bring it up for the seated lunge. See if you can lean, like I caught myself leaning back here. Lean straight and bring your foot up, your leg up, versus leaning back. You want to get that engagement. Exhale, return the foot to the floor, forward fold. Inhale, come up with the block between your hands again for plank. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, bring your hands to your shins, shine your heart forward, lift up halfway for half lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, sweep your arms up to the sky and reach. Hands together overhead, hands to heart center. Exhale. Notice if there's been an energy shift since we started our sequence. Notice if your breath has changed and anything you're feeling in your body. I'm going to continue on. Take your right knee out to the right side. Right toes to the ground, maybe prop your heel on the side of the chair. Square your hips forward, so you see I twisted with my leg. I don't want to do that all the way, and that leg is cramping up on me. So I'm not going to go out to the 90 degrees. I'm going to go where it feels comfortable, and I'm avoiding that little pinch and cramp there. Hands to heart center, take a soft gaze, pick a spot that it isn't moving. Engage my left, pressing my left foot into the ground. Raise my hands up overhead and spread them out, growing my tree. Nice and tall. Taking up space. As you exhale, bring your hands together, back to heart center. Give that right knee a hand. As you move it back towards center, slide your left knee out to the side, left toes to the ground, heel resting on the chair. Square your hips towards the front. Bring your hands to heart center. When you're ready, lift them overhead and grow your tree. Exhale, your hands together, hands to heart center. Bring your knee back to the center. Set up for eagle. Set the block to the outside of your left foot. Come up to a tall spine. Cross your right shin over your left shin or ankle or knee, wherever feels comfortable for you. Hug in. Take your arms out wide. Cross your left arm over your right, giving yourself a hug, pulling into the midline of your body, the center line, vertical center line. Your next exhale, sweep your hands out wide, let your right foot come to the floor. Maybe adjust your blocks to block the outside of the right foot. Tall spine, right shin or ankle or knee crosses over left. I'm going to slide that block out in front a little bit further this time. There we go. hugging in to the center of the bottom half of my body. Stick my arms out wide. This time I'm crossing my right over my left as I give myself a hug. If you guys are familiar with Eagle, then you may know there's another option instead of giving yourself a hug, but where you can cross your hands and the back of your hands come together. You can see how far apart mine are, which is why I don't care for this variation of the pose. I really like the hug better. I also think it gives better alignment for me in the hugging into the center of my body. But you can play around on what feels better for your hand position. These are all just variations. And your next exhale, sweep your arms open wide, bring your left foot back to the ground. Inhale, reach your arms up. Exhale, forward fold, using your blocks for support. I'm gonna go a little bit higher this time and slide my feet out and take this as a resting pose before we take our practice to the mat. So this is a version of child's pose that you can do in a chair. Some people, you'll also see it like taking a bolster and placing it across the mat and then resting like this. Elbows on the knees, that can work too. It's whatever feels good for your body as an actual rest instead of a stretch. So if folding this far forward is a stretch, then explore what it feels like to just stop either here with your elbows on your knees or even sitting up straight and resting against the back of your chair. But we want to find a rest. When you're ready, push back up to a tall seat. If you enjoyed the chair version of the sequence, I invite you to stay seated and continue that. For those of you who would like to take it to the mat and do standing versions of that, then go ahead and clear your mat, keeping your blocks maybe towards the front of your mat. I'm gonna move this chair out of my way. And come to standing towards the top of my mat. My feet, mine are about hip width distance apart. That may feel good to you. Press my feet into the ground, making my foundation. Since this is the first time we've been standing in this practice. Align, tuck my butt in, pull in my ribs. Shoulders are up, back, and down. My head is strong and aligned with my shoulders. Hands, palms facing forward for mountain pose. Inhale, reach your arms up. Stretch for the sky. Exhale, swan dive forward into a forward fold. Again, blocks could be handy here for if your hands don't reach the ground at any height. You can also take your feet out a little bit wider. Bend your knees as much as you need to let your torso come towards your thighs. Inhale, bring your hands to your shin, come to a flat back, look forward, half lift. Exhale, forward fold, place your hands on blocks or the mat. If you're still seated, you are going to come up with your hands under your right knee to a seat for a seated lunge. If you're on the mat with me, then you're going to step back with your left foot, toes tucked, bringing your knee towards 90 degrees for a low lunge. Pause here and breathe. In the stretch, your knee can be up or down in this low lunge. If you're seated, let that leg go in forward fold, reaching for your block. Coming back up to a seat with the block between your hands. If you're in the low lunge on your mat, step your right foot back to meet your left for a plank position. And those of us on the mat, switch the leg out, bringing your left foot forward into a left lunge. If you're seated, drop your block in a forward, sweep your arms down forward into a forward fold, bringing up your hands behind your left knee and lifting them up for that seated lunge. If you're with me on the mat, we're here in this lunge. Again, your back knee, your right knee could be up or down. And as you exhale, move your left foot back to meet your right, back into plank. If you're seated, come back to a seat. If you're seated, place your hands on your lap, look up and lift up for cow, and exhale, round in for cat. If you're on the mat, tuck your toes, lift your hips, send them up and back for downward facing dog. Continuing cat-cow if you're seated. If you're on the mat, look up between your hands, walk your feet towards the top of the mat. Together, we'll all meet in forward fold. And on your next inhale, everyone together, reach your arms up overhead to the sky, coming to standing or to a tall seat, hands together, hands to heart center. If you're seated, everyone together, I'm going to turn so it's facing the camera. Everyone together, turn your right knee out to the right side. For tree, you may want to block, or your foot can go to your ankle or your calf, or maybe even your thigh. Pick a spot that isn't moving and find your balance. Your toes can be on the ground or on a block. Find your steady, and when you're ready, grow your tree. If you fall out, come right back into it. It doesn't matter how many times you lose your balance or how much you dance or wiggle or your branches flow. Just focus on steady and that spot on the ground. Bring your hands together, hands back to heart center. Bring your right knee forward and your foot back to the ground. And bring your right knee forward together if you're seated as well. Shake it out. Just kind of dance my legs out in balancing poses. Everyone together, seated or on the mat, take your left knee out to the left side, point your toes, bring your left toes to the mat, bring the heel either to the side of the chair, to your ankle, to your calf, or to your thigh. Hands together at heart center. If you feel steady, you want to grow your tree, reach your arms up overhead. Stand tall and proud in your tree pose. It's okay if you lose your balance. It's okay if you dance and wiggle and wobble. It's just part of it. Bring your hands back together, back to heart center, toes to the ground, left leg back to the front, and dance that out. All right. So if you're seated, you may want to take, seated or standing, you may want to take a block to the outside of your left foot. We'll set up for eagle here. If you're standing, all together, reach your arms up overhead. If you're standing, bend your knees and sink into that invisible chair. Shift your weight to your left foot. Bring your right leg, your shin over, or your knee crossed, wherever you are comfortable, before in your chair, and try it in the standing place. If you're in the seated, do the same thing. You'll cross your legs. Everybody together, sweep your arms out wide, bringing your left elbow, the top of your right elbow. Give yourself a hug. Sink a little lower into the chair, whether it's an invisible or physical chair. Hug into the midline. And your next inhale, unravel, and come back up to standing. Hands on your hips and breathe. Maybe sway side to side. I'm going to move the block to the outside of my right foot. Everyone together, sweep your arms up overhead. If you're seated, sink further into your chair. Let your hips sink into the chair. If you're standing, bend your knees and sink into your invisible chair. Shift your weight to your right foot. Cross your left shin over your right shin. Maybe let the toes come to the block. Hug in to the midline with your bottom half of your body. Sweep your arms out wide. This time, let your right arm cross over your left arm. Sink a little further into that chair, hugging in your eagle. Breathe, don't forget to breathe. Hold the pose, not your breath. And your next inhale, come back up to standing and shake it out. So that's the standing version of the sequence. We'll go ahead, let your hands rest on your hips, catch your breath. And we'll do one last version of the standing sequence and integrate it for those of you who opted to stay seated, which is totally cool. Move my blocks back to the front of my mat. Come back to mountain. Grounding my feet, pressing into the mat. Getting aligned. Standing tall. Arms by my side facing forward. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, forward fold. Everybody together, hands come to blocks or to the ground, wherever is comfortable. Inhale, bring your hands to your shin. Flat back, shine your heart forward for half lift. Everybody together, exhale, hands come to the blocks. If you're seated, pick up one of those blocks. And you're gonna come back to a tall seat, pressing in your hands into the blocks. For the seated plank, pressing your feet into the ground. If you're standing, you're just going to step both feet back into a plank. Knees can be up or down. If you're seated, come back to a forward fold. If you're standing, let your knees come to the ground. If you're seated, take your hands behind your right knee and lift up, looking forward for a low lunge. If you're on the mat, sweep your right foot forward into this knee down low lunge. Again, your back knee can be up or down, whatever is more comfortable. Everybody together. If you're seated, return your right foot to the ground. If you're on the mat, return your right foot next to your left foot. Come back into plank. If you're seated, keep your hands in forward fold on the blocks. Seated, put your hands behind your left knee, come up to a seat, shine your heart forward. If you're on the mat, step your left foot forward to a low lunge. Your knee can be up or down. Breathe. Everybody together, return your left foot next to your right foot. If you're seated, pick up that block, come to a tall seat, pressing into the block for plank. If you're on the mat, you're already in plank. You have the option here. If you're on the mat, let your knees drop, come to tabletop, spread your knees wide, let your big toes touch and push back for child's pose. If you're seated, let the block go to the ground. You can either let your hands rest on the blocks or your elbows on your knees, or lean back in the chair for a resting pose. Once we're on the mat, we'll take advantage of that. If you're on the mat, push back up to tabletop under coming to all fours. Tuck your toes. Lift your knees, send your hips up and back to downward facing dog. Inhale, walk your feet towards the front of the mat. Forward fold. Inhale, rise up to standing. Hands together, heart center. You're seated. Come up to a tall seat with your hands at heart center. We'll do our final balancing poses for the session. So everyone together, point your right knee out to the right side. Let your right toes come to the ground. If you're in the chair, let your heel rest against the foot of the chair. If you're standing, your foot can come to your ankle or your calf or your thigh. Hands can be on your hips or at heart center, wherever you feel the most steady in your tree pose. Pressing that standing leg into the ground. If you're ready, you want to grow your tree. Bring your hands up overhead. However you feel the most steady. I feel steadier with my hands on my hips and using an assist from the wall, so that's going to be my choice. Bring your hands back together if they were raised overhead, and bring your hands to heart center. Turn your right knee back to the front. Let your right foot drop. Walk it out, march it out. Hands back to hips, take your left knee, point out to the left side. Left toes to the ground. Heel can come to the chair leg or your ankle or your calf. Wherever is most comfortable, your hands can be again on your hips, at heart center, or raised overhead, wherever you feel the steadiest. Hold the pose, not your breath. It's okay if you have to step out or use the wall or another prop. Ready. Let your toes come back to the ground, turn your left leg in, and shake it out. And let's visit Eagle for the final time in this sequence. Take a block to the outside, everybody together. Take that block to the outside of the left foot. If you're seated, come to a tall seat. Let your hips sink into the chair. If you're standing, lift your arms up overhead. Bend your knees and sink into the invisible chair. Shift your weight to your left foot. Shift your right foot, cross your right foot over your left, either the thighs or the knees or the shins. Your toes can come to a block. Everybody together, sweep your arms out wide. Bring your left arm over the top of your right arm and give yourself a hug. Hold in, squeeze in to the vertical center of your body. Grounding into your standing foot, holding the pose, and note your breath. Your next inhale, unwind, make that star shape, maybe stretch out just a little bit. Shift the block over to the right side. And come to standing. Or if you're seated in the chair, come to a tall seat again. If you're standing, sweep your arms up overhead. Bend your knees, sinking into your invisible chair. Everyone together, cross your left foot over your right foot, whether that's at the knees or the shin or the ankle. Sweep your arms out wide, crossing your right arm over your left, hugging into the center line. For this final eagle pose on the left side. And breathe. Whether you're seated or standing, let that all go and unwind. Everyone together now. I'm gonna grab my chair and come back to seated. You could also choose to do these closing poses in seated on the mat or laying down on the mat. So if you're gonna do seated in a chair with me, just come back to a comfortable seat. If you're gonna be on the mat, then go ahead and lay down on your back with your knees bent and your soles of your feet flat on the floor. If you're on the mat, you might want to give your knees a little hug, roll from side to side, massage your lower back. For those of us in chairs, take a moment to breathe and feel and notice. If you're on the mat, still that rocking motion. And you will take your knees and let them drop over towards the right side. In this supine twist, let your shoulders rest back towards the ground. It may be easier to have a block or a bolster or pillows under your knees if they won't quite go all the way to the ground. Don't worry, it's totally normal. I usually have at least a block, and that's what feels good on my back. If we're seated, we're gonna sit up with a tall spine, and on our next exhale, so inhale, sit up straight, exhale, take your left hand to your right thigh, bring your right hand around to the back of the chair, and a gentle twist. So all together, we're gonna twist. And if you're seated, inhale, straighten your spine, lengthen your spine, exhale, twist a little further. It may be helpful to actually come back out of that. Hip walk, so move your left hip forward just a hitch. Hip walk, scoot your butt. Hip walk with a tall spine, left hand to the outside of the right thigh, right hand goes behind you, inhale, lengthen spine, exhale, twist. So we want this to be a middle back twist, not a low back twist. And the purpose of ending with twists is just to reset our spine after all the movement that we've done, the ups and the downs and the straightening and the twisting, the stabilizing. So twisting this way lets us reset our spine. If you're on the mat, bring your knees back up to the center. Give yourself a hug. Maybe make circles with the knees. If you're in the chair, slowly come back to center. If you're on your mat, the next time you're rocking and rolling towards the left side, let your knees fall out to the left side. If you're seated, we're gonna hip walk the right hip forward this time, just a little bit. Inhale, take the right hand to the left thigh, left hand behind us, lengthen on our inhale, exhale, twist. If you're on the mat, bring your knees back up to center, let the soles of your feet come to the ground. If there's any other movement that you would need to make your practice complete, I invite you to take that. For those of us who are seated, we're gonna inhale, come back to the center. Any last movements that you need, let's find what feels good. It'll make our practice complete. If you're on the mat, let your legs come out long, or put a bolster or pillows underneath your knee for Savasana. If you're seated, stretch your feet out in front of you and let your heels come. Let your hands rest on your belly or your lap for Savasana. Maybe you want to take a towel rolled under your head. Yep, gonna have to cut that. So if you're on the ground, let your legs go out long. Maybe put a bolster under your knees for our final resting pose, Savasana. If you're seated in a chair, let your feet come out a little bit more comfortable. They're still supportive. I grabbed just a towel that I have laying around, and I'm going to roll that up, and I'm going to put it around my neck for a little extra support. And this is going to let me take my Savasana in the chair with my neck supported, so I can actually relax. And so Savasana is important because it lets our body process all of the work that we just did. This is the part where, having connected our body and our breath, that our mind can start to become and go, oh yeah, I see now. And where we start to process the thoughts of the day. So I just invite you not to skip out on this part, but to take that rest and to get curious about what you're feeling now compared to what you felt when we started our practice together. How does it feel physically in your body? Is there a difference? How does it feel mentally? Is there emotions that came up, or did you start with emotions, or maybe you were ticked off at somebody when we started and all that emotion has been allowed to settle? That often happens for me. I also find sometimes practices raise all kinds of different emotions. So just notice what has come up for you in this practice. There's no good or bad, there's no judgment. It's just being here and noticing. Wherever you are, come back to your breath. Notice if your breath got longer and deeper when you heard me speak again. Bring movement back into your body. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Maybe reach your arms up overhead. Stretch your feet out long for a great stretch. Seated or laying down, you can do this. If you're laying down, roll over onto your favorite side. Take a moment. If you're seated, maybe take that blanket off your neck. And together now, when we're ready, push back up into our seat with our feet on the ground. If you're on the mat, maybe take a comfortable cross-legged seat or your feet out long in front of you. Let your hands come to your lap, prayer position. Let your eyes gaze down softly towards the ground or eyes closed, whichever is more important. Bow your chin in honor of the work you've done today. May you have peace in your heart, peace in your thoughts, and peace in your life. Thank you for practicing with me today. Namaste.